Dame Margaret Hayford, as Chancellor of Coventry University, is an illustrious citizen of the United Kingdom. Dame Hayford is fully Ghanaian and a passionate lover of the Ghanaian nation and her Asante heritage. She wrote the following foreword to the book: Silhouettes of a Treasured Heritage. There is a wonderful piece of film dating back to 6 March 1957, the momentous occasion when Ghana gained independence from colonial rule. It depicts the point at which Nkrumah takes a podium with his very first cabinet ministers, included amongst whom is my father's older brother, Archie Hayford. That piece of film is not only a record of a moment of pivotal importance to Ghana, but is also the snapshot of a very proud family moment that's personal to the Hayford family. So, it was with some excitement that I found that moment recorded in Stella Ife Osamo's delightful telling of the story of a young, mixed-race, Scots-Ghanaian heroine, Miranda. In this both charming and enlightening fact-based novel, I found that so much of it included events building up to Ghana's independence celebrations. Many scenes retold the lives of the Ghanaian aristocracy, of which, like Miranda, my father's family also formed part, and scenes that were reminiscent of conversations and memories that my parents would recall, about life back home, the reality of which my brothers and I, growing up in Britain, rather like the heroine of the novel, were otherwise totally unaware. The interest of this novel is that although short, it manages, along with spinning the personal stories of Miranda, her doting Scots grandma, loving parents, Ghanaian ancestors of a royal lineage, long-suffering Irish beau, and other individuals, to involve a weft of the many colourful events in the history of Africa, the Caribbean, Britain and America that are inevitably common to the philosophical and the actual historic heritage of so many people of colour. These events and realities are inevitably woven into the fabric of our lives and form our characters, like the colourful threads that contribute to the strength, character, and resilient nature of that most complex, fine-patterned kente cloth. We are inevitably formed from lost empires and constitutions, the legacy of slavery, of colonialism, the civil rights movement, independence, Windrush, and a myriad of triumphs over slights, hurts, and hostilities. Mixed race, mixed perspectives, and a confusing legacy all have to be made more understandable for our heroine, who is fortunate in being loved and nurtured unjudgmentally by her Scots grandma, who creates something of an anchor in her life. However, following a trauma, she is encouraged to visit Ghana and meets a large cohort of relatives, all of whom are well-respected, extremely well-placed of the Ghanaian aristocracy, and not the half-clothed individuals with whom she had associated the continent for most of her life. This opens her eyes to an African history that helps rebalance her feelings of self-worth. Although the novel retells now familiar historical events that took place in America at the time of the civil rights, yet the parallels with the Black Lives Matter sentiments are not insignificant and makes us consider those earlier struggles afresh. Listening to a key speaker, our heroine notes, one suddenly realized that we are living in a troubled nation. The ordered tranquility of California and the relative normality of life in New York was an illusion. A bitter war of attrition was being waged in the South, and the issues and choices were similar to those that had faced the United States during the Second World War. The choice was between right and wrong, between good and evil, between justice and betrayal. Black people whose toil and sweat had helped build America were being denied their basic dignity and rights. Many were lynched because they dared to demand the right to decent lives. The novel deals with the death of Martin Luther King through the consoling words of Eglantine, a dignified African-American relative, by marriage, of Miranda. Eglantine explains, revolutionaries, philosophers, kings and people who sowed the seeds of change often had to water that seed with their very blood. Christ had done so. So had Marcus Garvey and Gandhi, and now it was Martin King's turn to pay the ultimate price. There is more than a reflection of Miranda's own conflicts in the echoes of the Irish and Scots struggles for self-determination, in her beloved, who is an Irishman, and her devotion to her paternal grandmother, whose cottage in the Highlands is so often her refuge, at times when she feels most lost, until that very grandmother urges her to make acquaintance also with her West African heritage, in order to understand better her full value and re-establish her feelings of self-worth. There is poignancy when Miranda's mother, who is a trained nurse, talks of how proudly and devoted the diaspora had learned about Britain as the mother country, and had been schooled during the war, to believe that they were working towards helping the mother country defeat Hitler, even to the point where sacks of cocoa were picked and sold, and the proceeds sent to bolster the war effort. Miranda's mother recalled somewhat hollowly that the knowledge and thought of Britain as the mother country was so firmly and totally embedded in us that I felt a downright fool when I got here and discovered it was not the case. The maternal instincts were sorely lacking. In spite of that, Miranda doesn't undergo an easy transition into understanding the Ashanti people, for whom it transpires her mother had been an important matriarchal figure. But Miranda gains a horrifying realization that both parents had sacrificed so much in marrying outside of their respective cultures, and the greatness of the sacrifice of her mother, a princess and heiress to the Asante Hene, the king of the Ashanti people, is something that she had never imagined. In getting to know her mother's family, Miranda becomes closer to her African-American in-law, Eglantine, and following Eglantine's influence, and also her own love for her medical career, Miranda ends up studying and qualifying as a doctor in America, where she works in Harlem, with the poor and badly served, and one is very aware of her gradually growing up as a consequence of the horrors she sees, and the way she is called upon to administer much, with so relatively few resources. Her personal growth coincides with the maturity of the civil rights movement. Although it's impossible in a novel of this length to dive deeply into many events that inevitably color and shape the lives of the Black diaspora, the book, through one of the civil rights movement protagonists, encourages us to move from always seeing race issues through the positive or negative lenses of white and black, but also to consider that the perspective could be that of people of color, living cheek by jowl with people of no color. It opens a discussion that helps one understand that to an extent we all are involved in the complexity of being mixed race, and having to learn to love the full spectrum of our heritage, and to understand and love our whole selves in so doing. A valuable lesson. Margaret Casely Hayford, 27th April 2019.